Okay, today is the first technical assistance offered by CSAC, or the Campus Sexual Assault Commission, with more to come in the future based on the needs and requests from institutions. OSHI will begin the presentation by providing an overview of the statute and what institutions may expect to be in compliance with this law. Afterwards, the Campus Sexual Assault Commission will introduce their members, as well as provide an overview of their hard work to date. The commission will also highlight resources currently available to assist institutions, no matter where they are in the climate survey process, as we strive to make sure that all students feel safe and included on their campus environment. We will then address questions that were submitted by registration, followed by next steps CSAC will be taking to help institutions improve during this process. If any additional questions arise during the presentation, again, please feel free to place them in the chat box. We do anticipate doing a frequently asked questions document to capture what we've heard from institutions, which when available will be placed on the OSHI website. Next slide. All right. To help further the state's goal that every student should have a safe and inclusive learning environment, which will help students be more successful in persisting and completing to that degree, the governor and legislature signed into law an act to help further the goals. We're going to drop a link to the direct law in the chat so that you have access to it. But the four main charges include establishing the Campus Sexual Assault Commission, which will then study and evaluate emerging issues, policies, and practices, monitor institutions' implementation of recommendations set forth by the Safe and Inclusive Learning Environment State Plan Working Group and the New Jersey Task Force on Campus Sexual Assault. Those are the two resources that we'll be sharing briefly. And then CSAC will also offer technical support and review of institution campus climate surveys and develop a statewide action plan in response to these survey findings. You can go ahead to the next slide. So I do just want to emphasize that this includes that all institutions of higher education shall conduct a campus climate survey at intervals no longer than 4 years and submit the de-identified survey data to OSHI. Again, I do want to emphasize the law states de-identified data. All data submitted will not be personally identifiable. Most of the climate surveys are typically conducted anonymously. And in this first year, institutions will be submitting via a template and may submit the de-identified data in addition if they choose. So to help preview the anticipated submission process, I'm pleased to introduce my colleague here at OSHI, who many of you are familiar with and might work closely with in your IR fields, Radha, who serves as OSHI's Research and Data Analyst.
Hello. So OSHI will be working with CSAC to develop a template for institutions to submit their campus climate survey information. We'll also be providing a submission template with instructions on how to securely submit this in late September. And also, while we recognize that there is a lot of questions being asked, we want to ensure that compliance is met. So more information is forthcoming and institutions will be notified of this, and availability of the template will be broadcasted. We anticipate about posting on the CSAC website that's found on the OSHI homepage and register of this survey of this webinar today. For submissions, institutions can anticipate categories around demographics, summary of participants, and a year one baseline information, summary of findings, logistical information, such as the survey type used and next steps for survey results. There will also be 2 opportunities for institutions to submit a template. Institutions that have conducted a climate survey may submit on or before December 31st. Note, this is a Saturday. And institutions that have not conducted a campus climate survey may submit on or before June 30th, 2023.
So with that, I do just want to flag some questions that we did receive in advance about how the submissions will be used. According to statute, the findings will be shared with the commission, and the commission will be developing a statewide action plan that includes policies, programs, or procedures responsive to the issues and needs identified by institutions of higher education. So again, if your institution has already conducted a survey between 2018 to 2022, you can anticipate submitting the template by December 31st, and more information will be forthcoming. Now for the best part of the presentation, I'm excited to introduce Dr. Connor, the fearless inaugural chair of the Campus Sexual Assault Commission. Again, they have a lot of tasks ahead of them, so really appreciate the work that they have done. Many of you already know her due to her extensive work and collaboration across the state. She serves as the Director of Equity and Title IX Coordinator at Montclair State University. And with that, I will now turn it over to her and the commission.
Well, thank you, Steph. Thank you, Rada, and everyone from folks at OSHI. Can you hear me okay, Steph?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, welcome. As Steph mentioned, my name is Dr. Ashante Connor. And I'm the chair of CSAC, also known as the Campus Sexual Assault Commission. And I also have the honor of serving as Director of Equity and Title IX Coordinator at Montclair State University. At this time, I will also be more than happy to announce my colleagues here on the commission. So commission members, as I call your name, I would ask that you unmute yourself and please feel free to introduce yourself, your name, your title, and any information that you want to share with our participants today. So I'm first going to start with Dr. Paloma Amar.
Good morning. I am Paloma Amar. I am the Assistant Director at the Office of Gender-Based Violence Services at the Division of Women. And I have been in the sexual violence and domestic violence services since the early 90s, first in the nonprofit sector and now in the public sector. And I am very glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Donna Chiara on the phone from AFT. Did you see her chime in?
I don't believe she's here today.
Okay, all right. So Donna Chiara is a member of the commission, and she serves now as the AFT president for the state of New Jersey. Similar experience, longstanding experience in doing this work. Next, we have Miss Marina Ford.
Hi all, so happy to join you. I was appointed to this commission as the only student representative. I worked at Rutgers University and did a lot of advocacy work. Since then, I have graduated and I'm currently working as an administrative aide at NYU Stern School of Business, and I'm also a graduate student at NYU Steinhardt. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Marina. And then also next we have one of my favorite colleagues, not to show favoritism, but Miss Kat McGee from Ramapo.
Hello, everyone. Good morning on this rainy Friday. My name is Kat McGee. My pronouns are she and hers. And I serve as the Director of Title IX, ADA, and Compliance Training at Ramapo College, where I am also a very proud alum. And I appreciate the fact that we are here, we're doing this for our students. All of you took the time to be with us today during one of the most hectic times of the school year to serve our students. And so it's really my pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you. And you'll be hearing from Kat in a few minutes shortly. Next, we have Dr. Sarah McMahon from Rutgers University.
Good morning, everyone. So appreciative that you're all here. My name is Sarah McMahon. I'm an associate professor in the School of Social Work at Rutgers University, where I'm also director of our Center for Research on Ending Violence. And I also have a role at Rutgers where I'm the special advisor on campus climate to our executive senior vice president for academic affairs. Thanks.
Thank you. And I would have to add our resident expert on the commission, and we look to her often for her knowledge and her expertise. So thank you so much for being with us today. Then we also have Dr. Frank Merks from Drew University, another favorite of mine.
I'm always glad to be a favorite. Hi, everybody. I'm Frank Merks. I am the Vice President of Enrollment Management and Campus Life at Drew University and was appointed by Governor Murphy to represent on the Commission for Independent and Private Schools in New Jersey. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Merks. Next, we have Evelyn Parin. Where she jumped on. I'm not sure if Evelyn jumped on stuff.
I don't believe so.
All right. Not with us today, but also equally missed is Dr. Sheetal Ranjan. Dr. Ranjan, some of you may know her from her extensive work across the state. She serves as a board member for the Bergen County Community College. She also now is a professor and sits a full professor at Montclair State University, but previously served as a longstanding professor at William Patterson University. Unfortunately, she is not here today, but as you see and as you go through our resources, she has touched this work, both through her work and her research and also other support for the commission. So she is missed and we will see her next time. Next, we have Jennifer Stonerod, another new favorite of mine.
Thank you. I also like being a favorite. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Stonerod. I'm an Assistant Attorney General and Chief of Staff at the Division of Criminal Justice, part of the Attorney General's Office. I am proud to serve on this commission, and I also was fortunate to serve on the task force on campus sexual assault that met a few years ago. So I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. And then we already met Stephanie. I don't know if you want to add anything else, Steph, that you maybe
I don't have anything else to add, but just really excited to have the expertise of and the very diverse backgrounds of all the members here. That was very intentional to help provide and help support all the different institutions we have across our state. So thank you to the commission members.
Thank you. And as Steph mentioned in my introduction, I too have been touching Title IX work as a practitioner for a little over 7 years during my time at Berkeley College and also at my time at William Patterson University and now at Montclair State University. So I'm excited to bring that diverse background, working in both the private and the public sectors, working with residential populations, but then also commuter populations, adult students. So I think the commission is really, really gifted to have such a great, diverse cross-section of folks that really are just committed to this work and really want to advance safety and inclusion and equity across the state. So now we want to know who you all are. So we are going to launch a quick poll. And if I could look to Aiden, just to drop it in the chat, if you can just do us a favor, it's important that we know what position you hold at your institution. It's always helpful as we move ahead, we can kind of help to shape expectations. So please take a moment to answer the poll and we'll give you a few seconds to do that. So Aiden, I'm not sure where our numbers are. Participation?
Yeah, we're at 78%.
Okay, we'll give it another few moments. And would you mind, Aiden, sharing the results?
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to read each one individually?
Sure.
I think Aiden, you should be able to end poll and share the results.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know I could do it by doing that, but okay, end poll. All right, is everyone seeing that? Oh, no.
There we go.
There we go. Yep.
Wonderful. Okay. So we have about 5% chief diversity officers, dean students, governmental relations, HR, so 940 to IR folks. Okay. And thank you. This is good to know because as we kind of offer some information up today about our resources, it's helpful to kind of guide us. So if you wouldn't mind to the next slide. If you can advance 2 slides, Rada, I'm going to introduce.
I think we actually have one more poll about the sectors, if we wanted to go ahead and do that first.
Sure, thanks, Steph. So we have one more poll. You can let us know where you're from. Hey, Aiden. depending on the number you can share if you like.
Yeah, I can share it. We're at 76 or 77, 80. So I can, do you want me to edit now?
Please, thank you.
All right. Yep.
Okay. Very nice. Okay. So as you can see, we also here in this space provide a diverse perspective, and we're coming from diverse institutional types. And I think this is important for the commission as we move forward, as we identify what our needs are and how we can offer the most support to you during this time. So the goal today is to essentially level set. This is the first time that the commission has had the opportunity to formally introduce ourselves to you, but then also to kind of put a voice behind the compliance ask, right? That's come out of the state and that's come out of this commission. So I want to take a step back and take us back to 2017 quickly, and when the campus sexual task force was constructed. And I'm gonna look to my colleague, Dr. Frank Merks, to offer some insight. And Rada, perfect. One more slide. Thank you. So Frank.
Great, thank you, Ashante. First of all, again, thank you all for being here. I think I have 35 minutes to speak. I'm kidding. But I just wanted to go ahead and give a brief overview. Normally in a public format, I would be standing in and a little bit more interactive, but I'm going to try to read a lot of my thoughts as we go through. The New Jersey Task Force on Campus Sexual Assault, which you can go ahead and see the report cover and some of our efforts on the screen, really stemmed from a long time advocates in the New Jersey Senate and Assembly. There were quite a few co-sponsors, including Drew University's own Senator Teresa Ruiz, but the bill had two primary champions, the former Assemblywoman Valerie Neary Huddle, and in the Senate, Senator Sandra Cunningham. Governor Christie signed the bill, creating the task force into law in December of 2015, and we collectively started to meet in June of 2016. Getting the task force started was an important step for all of us in higher education, as prior to the passage of the bill creating the task force, there was a variety of legislative endeavors and draft legislation written that some of us may have found challenging to our work. But behind the scenes, there were many who were working with the New Jersey legislature to create bills that would better serve our students, practitioners in the state. One of those champions was the then executive director of NJ CASA, Patricia Teffenhart, who would ultimately end up serving as one of the co-chairs of the task force when it was formed. What is important for all of you to know is that since the task force and the spirit of legislation and the efforts of leadership of the staff, the leadership and the staff in OSHE, we have centered on how best to support institutions in the very important work of addressing sexual and relationship violence on our campus. Hence, our time today and future meetings is really to assist implementation on our campuses. I was very privileged to be appointed by Governor Christie on the original task force, and then again by Governor Murphy to serve with colleagues on the current commission. Two other members of the original task force are also on the commission, and while many may not know them by name, now you do, your lives and their lives and the lives of our students and other citizens of New Jersey have been impacted incredibly positively by their efforts. One who already introduced herself is Dr. Sarah McMahon, who again is the Associate Professor and Director of the Center for Research on Ending Violence at Rutgers. Sarah is a recognized national expert and leader in campus climate surveys, having worked with the Obama White House as a collaborator on the White House Task Force to protect students from sexual assault. Dr. McMahon is a tireless advocate and an educator on campus climate work, as it is vital for us and our campuses to know what the true campus conditions and environment are, because we all know that many victims and survivors of violence often will not report or seek an official remedy through a conduct or legal process. The second is Jennifer Stonerod, who serves as the Assistant Attorney General and Chief of Staff in the Division of Criminal Justice. Jen was part of the history-making Burlington County Bar Association leadership team, which was the first time ever that an all-female executive slate of officers were sworn in as the association leaders. All of us on our campuses and as citizens in the state of New Jersey in our daily lives benefit from the work that Jen has championed, including leading change on law enforcement response to domestic and dating violence. I wanted to highlight them as it's important for everyone to know that the task force and now the commission is a collective of experts who bring their expertise and talents to the table. Governor Murphy, Secretary Bridges, and all of us who work or attend higher education in New Jersey benefit from the individual and collective work of the volunteers on this commission. It is also important to note that both the task force and the commission have practitioners who serve in leadership roles. The task force was co-chaired by Donna Barry, a trailblazing director of health services at Montclair State, and the current commission is chaired by Dr. Ashante Connor, the Director of Equity and Title IX coordinator, also at Montclair State, which just means the rest of us need to step up and push Montclair State to the side when it comes to these leadership roles, I guess. But the work of the task force is available online, and you can see on the screen the cover again of the final report, which was released in June 2017. We were all very proud that our work was done on time, high quality, and hit the requirement of being done within that year. There are 12 recommendations. A personal favorite of mine was that we should create a pathway for education on consent to be implemented in K-12 schools, as all too often the first time students are being educated on consent is when they arrive on a college campus. Primarily, this stands out as a favorite of mine because it stemmed from an open testimony session that we had with all of the student government leaders from many institutions around the state. But when we spoke with them, it became clear that nearly at every institution, all the student leaders were saying the first time I heard about the education for prevention of sex and relationship violence was when I first stepped into orientation on our campus. A couple of recommendations centered on relationships between institutions of higher education and our state and local nonprofits, including having representation at county SART meetings and developing MOUs between higher education and county and state nonprofits. It's important for us to recognize that all of us are in tight budgetary and human resources, and there are challenges that are there. What we felt was important for the task force to recognize is that not only colleges and universities are, but so are our nonprofit agencies throughout the state and county. So we wanted to make sure that we honored the work that they do for us, often for free, on our campuses that benefit not only us as practitioners, but also all of our students and employees. The importance of equitable processes and preventive education were recognized and recommended, and a statement identifying that banning alcohol on campuses would not end sexual violence was also included. That was an 11th hour addition, as there was some buzz that was taking place throughout Trenton that if we just banned alcohol, that potentially we could go ahead and end sexual violence. So we wanted to make clear that that was not the case. 3 or 25% of our recommendations were focused on the need to not only conduct campus climate surveys, but to also create strategies to address and implement their findings. There's been much work on the follow-up these recommendations, which you will hear about soon, including efforts by OSHE to create resource documents to assist in implementation. The Safe and Inclusive Learning Environment Working Group produced significant supporting documents to assist all of us on campus to implement campus climate surveys and a toolkit to assist in implementing other task force recommendations, including prevention, programming, sample MOUs that you could use to create with your local nonprofits or law enforcement. As I hope I was able to show, the efforts of the commission and the task force before it is to create an atmosphere of support and shared learning so that individual campuses may be able to implement the required elements of campus climate surveys and others, but continue to create an educational environment that allows us all to work and learn in an equitable and violence-free campus. Our goal is to support with as many of the appropriate tools so that if an incident should recur, we can go ahead and respond, but to also be able to create environments that we can prevent as many incidents from actually occurring. Understanding that each of the campuses has differing resources, the collective work of the task force, as well as now the commission, is to go ahead and assist in creating, again, a collaborative environment so we all can be successful in our efforts. So thank you, Dr. Connor, for letting me go and give a brief history of the task force and also the work now of the commission.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that. I think it's always important to level set. I think what we do know is that some institutions have been able to have been collecting data, have been conducting surveys, have been doing this for some time. And we know that some have not, right? I think it's important, the purpose of today is to let level set, so everyone can walk away today with information, knowledge, and resources so they can move implementation forward, whether you're currently in the process or you want to maintain or improve what's currently been happening. So as Frank mentioned, after the task force concluded their work, the commission began to meet regularly, beginning in November of 2020, after the appointment of Dr. Bridges to the role of Secretary of Higher Education. The commission began to meet quarterly shortly thereafter that, focusing on several key points. First, level setting again as a commission, getting to know each other, getting to understand how we all bring a perspective, whether it be through research or scholarly work, or whether it be through the practitioner experience or a combination of both, or whether it be through law enforcement or through the legal or the compliance route or through the advocacy role. We all bring a perspective. The goal was also to review the questionnaire that was administered by OSHI in 2021 to institutions to kind of, again, see where we are and how can we provide the most technical support at the commission. And what we learned is that 33 institutions were in fact conducting campus climate surveys and 40 were not. So it showed that the work of this group was really to be a group that could provide tangible technical support to help institutions that have not been conducting campus surveys. We also, as a commission, unpacked the barriers that institutions were facing. So a question was asked of the institutions that have been conducting. So what are some of the barriers that you've been experiencing over the years that'll help to inform the commission as they work with institutions across the state? And what was shared was survey fatigue, both on behalf of the student population and employees potentially, but also the individuals that are administering it. The fact that there's competition with other surveys on campus, right? Like, you know, what cycle should we be on? Should it be focused on strictly on sexual violence? Should it be focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, other forms of either race-based harm or other forms of bias? Also, what was discussed as a barrier was resources. How can we afford to pay for this? You know, as we know, many of us are still bouncing back from the effects of COVID. As practitioners, we're still managing that. For some of us, this is our first full year back, and we're still trying to figure that out. And there are costs associated with that. And then also there was barriers that were shared as it relates to staffing or the expertise on the campus or the time to be able to do that. So I want to name that for those of you in this space. I want you to understand that we read the findings and we took them to heart and we really considered them deeply as we prepared a technical assistance workshop sessions that will be meaningful and make sense to help you as we move forward. The commission also spent time in reviewing our bylaws, right? So we took the law that Steph reviewed with us earlier to try to understand what is our scope? What is the focus? What are we really going to be doing? And in light of the death of George Floyd, as many of us on the ground know, our institutions have been combating racial and other forms of harm on our campuses. So we wanted to make sure that this commission could also support institutions who want to make sure that we include sexual violence, but also other forms of harm as well in our surveys. We were working to put together this TA workshop and others that are going to come. And then lastly, we continue to meet quarterly just to make sure that we are meeting regularly so we can remain abreast of questions that are coming in from you all, and also that we are we are responding to the needs of the group. So I'm about to segue now to, if you can, Rada, if you can go back 2 slides. Frank did an amazing job of kind of providing a high level overview, but this is a snapshot, if you will, of some of the key recommendations that came out of one of the 3 resources that we're going to share with you now. So first, and I believe it's either going to be Rada or someone from OSHI will drop the resources in the chat. there are what I call our best practices for conducting campus climate surveys. The working group came together, carrying forward the work of the task force to create 3 deliverables. And these deliverables were designed to be tangible documents that you could print, download, mark up, really kind of go through to kind of give you a step-by-step guide to how you can achieve this work. So the first document that I'm going to review with you briefly is the best practices document. And this document is for all institutions, despite where you are in the process, because as you know, conducting campus climate surveys is cyclical and it's ongoing and it's always growing and evolving. But the goal is for it on the screen, we have outlined some recommendations that as you move towards creating or maintaining an environment that is both safe and inclusive, we want you to consider the following. First, to connect. Connect this work to the work of your institution. So whether that be through your mission, your vision, your goals, or your strategic plan, okay? Also consider the broad definition of diversity, recognizing that identities are nuanced and they are key to your institution. So making sure that there is no one-size-fits-all definition for what diversity is. It's important for you to have an understanding of what your institution's needs are. Third is to engage your community, engage relevant stakeholders that are doing this work with you, and try to resist silos. It can be tempting, but it's important that you bring this information back to your campuses and say, how can we approach this as a unit to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our students so we can keep our campuses as safe and inclusive as possible. Fourth, to embrace, right? Embrace the ongoing and dynamic nature of diversity. And as you know, things are oftentimes changing and the needs of our students are also changing. So as you're looking at systems and you're looking at procedures, you want to consider the ongoing needs of our communities. 5, provide. For all of our senior leaders and administrators on this call or that are going to hear this message, it's important that we remind you that the staff who are charged with leading this work, they need to have the appropriate resources, funding, and power to carry this work out. So it's important that as a group, that as an institution, you are considering what are the needs of the people that are carrying out this function, that they have what they need to be successful. And number 6 is to self-promote your efforts, right? So as you gather data, evaluate them regularly. I call it the cycle of continuous improvement. There's always opportunities to learn more and to gather from our experiences and share it widely with your community. And then implement and move on what the data is saying. Because the data is going to tell you a story, and we encourage you to be courageous and to hear the story. And as we move forward towards implementation, the data will help you to identify how to address the data. So next, we're going to move to real quickly again some best practices for overall conducting campus climate surveys. First is to have that spirit of assessment, and that can be conducted through environmental scans and through campus climate surveys. Also through your policies, making sure that your policies in fact set a standard and they share a message to your community that these are our expectations of behavior on our campus, and this is what we expect of all members who step foot on our campus. The procedures should be the spirit of the policy. So what your policy says should be manifest by what your procedures say. They should adapt. They should be clear. They should be transparent, and they should also make sure that they are setting the precedents for what we're looking for on our campuses. Number 5 is incentives. There are several incentives out there that are offered across the state and across federal, both at the federal and state level, to incentivize this work on your campuses. That can help provide some funding and support as you're rolling out these initiatives. And then lastly, accountability. This is something that's really important to me because accountability shows to your community that we are responsive and that we are going to take actionable steps on what we learn. And one example of that is institutions that have considered adapting restorative justice practices in their work. For those of you, for those RJ scholars, you understand that restorative practices are ways for institutions to be able to identify an alternative way to resolve dispute and conflict. And for those that are willing and interested, that process will help them to resolve conflict in a meaningful way that will allow them to seek closure or peace building throughout that process. So the second deliverable that we have is going to be reviewed by my colleague, Kat McGee from Ramapo. And this document is the implementation guide, which she will take you through at a high level. What are some of the takeaways and some of the tangibles that can help you as you implement on your campus? So Kat?
Thank you so much, Ashante, for providing us the groundwork for the conversation today. So the 3 working group deliverables that you see here were provided by folks who were parts of the working group for the Safe and Inclusive Learning Environments group. And I know many of them are actually with us on the call today. So I want to thank them and also acknowledge the experience and the expertise that they brought to the table in creating each of these deliverables that are such a valuable resource that I think unfortunately was overshadowed by the timing in which it came out, right? So these were released as many of our campuses were shutting down during the early days of COVID. And we were in a mode of supporting students in crisis and really transitioning to a very different place. One of the reasons that we wanted to share these again was to highlight how important and valuable these resources are. And as Ashante mentioned, I'm going to provide just a high level kind of overview of a couple of these guides. So for any of our folks who did serve on creating any of these working deliverables, I encourage you, feel free to drop additional information or supplement what we're doing in the chat. I recognize that we have a lot of expertise with us here today. Okay, so first we're going to focus on the implementation guidebook. So what is this? This is really a go-to guide for practitioners who do this work on a day-to-day basis, right? So ultimately, our goal is to eliminate sexual violence on our campuses. We know that this is essential for a safe and inclusive learning environment, but do we know how to go about doing this? Do we know what specific and measurable steps we can take to actually achieve this goal? So this is helping us all deliver on the recommendations that Dr. Frank Merrick's just laid out today from the 2017 task force. And it does so by providing a comprehensive review of best practices in the field and across disciplines in 5 different areas. So those areas are prevention and education, right? Ultimately, like I always tell my colleagues, if I could give my entitled Title IX coordinator salary to the folks who do prevention and education, that would really benefit us. The work that they do to support our students and ultimately make our campuses safer is so essential. Services and for survivors and accused students is the next one, making sure that we have equity and fairness in the process. The third is investigation and adjudication. And then the next is collaborating with our community-based partners, such as law enforcement or community service agencies. And then finally, assessment, right? So we see the connections with the campus climate surveys that we are doing or will be doing. Out of this document, a couple of the resources that I would like to highlight for this group today. There is a table that compares different prevention programs that are available to the field. Each of these programs are theory-driven and evidence-based. They have been tested and are looking at the results and outcomes, right? And so this is a really great resource to help institutions meet our Clery Act requirements. We are all required to offer prevention programming to all of our incoming students. And so this is an excellent resource to review the state of the field and what resources are out there. There's also sample policy language for ensuring that we're responding fairly and equitably to complaints. Those of us in the Title IX world know that there has been quite some change since these documents first came out. And of course, our policy is going to be dictated by compliance. But there's a lot of areas in which compliance really sets the floor for what we have to do, not the ceiling of what our best practice is. And that's what we should be striving for as a state in terms of offering resources and support for our students who are impacted by these issues. So as many of us do in the summertime, we look to revisit our policy language to dig out this document and make sure that we are rising to that level. And as Frank mentioned earlier, right, in light of the fact that budgets are limited, personnel is limited, we wear many hats on our different campuses. This guidebook has a sample memorandum of understanding to use with agencies such as law enforcement or sexual violence programs or other community agencies who can really bring their expertise to our campus. This is all about not recreating the wheel, right? Memorandums of understanding are very lengthy, written by attorneys. This gives you a sample template that you can build off of if you do not already have some of those partnerships with really valuable community agencies. So who would benefit from this document? Offices that are really doing, like I said, day-to-day work with students, such as your prevention or advocacy offices, your campus safety, counseling, diversity, equity, inclusion offices, Title IX, student conduct, institutional research, all of these folks. I would encourage you to share this with colleagues in these areas and also to bookmark it for future reference. So after you've conducted your campus climate survey, when you're about to move on to the next step of creating an action plan, right? What do we do with all of this data? How do we make meaningful change on our campuses? One of the things that you can do is compare your data to the best practices that are included in this guidebook and see, is there a connection here, right? The question of what to do with this data, what comes next, is much less daunting when you have a reference guide from state experts that can be used to really inform your action plan. Next slide, please. Okay, so switching gears, looking at the third deliverable, this is the inventory of campus climate surveys. So in order to make meaningful change, when we're looking at what campus programs are we offering, what do our policies and procedures look like? We need to be able to inform this with campus specific data. We know that campus climate surveys are a best practice and in fact now a requirement for all of us in the state of New Jersey. And the reason for this is it allows us to have insight on the experiences, perceptions, behaviors, attitudes, and so on from our campus community, and to use that data to drive change. Another thing that has been very helpful, particularly when talking with leaders on my campus, is helping folks to understand that this allows us to benchmark comparisons with other institutions, right? To provide some context for the data and for what we're seeing on our campus and how that fits in with the larger picture. So all of our institutions, we're going to have a unique set of goals for what is it that we want to get out of this campus climate survey. It's going to depend on institutional factors and some of the things that we're looking to measure, right? So if you are somebody who's in an institution looking to really get the ball rolling and get this started for the first time, I encourage you to look at what this inventory refers to as the core domains of climate, right? So all of these different core domains are really evaluating what Ashanti was talking about earlier in terms of looking at how do institutions respond to bias or sexual misconduct? What are bystander attitudes that influence whether or not students would be comfortable stepping up and getting involved if they saw a situation with red flags in order to protect each other? It looks at direct experiences of students who have experienced sexual assault, bias, stalking, all of these things, right? Because we know that this is important to get a sense of in light of the fact that underreporting is so common for these crimes on our campuses. So you're going to look at these core domains and get a sense of what is it that is most important for us to measure on our campus. And when you have a sense of that, that will help you then determine what survey instrument might be appropriate for your institution to consider, right? So as I said, thankfully, there's not a need to recreate the wheel. Our colleagues who did this work initially were really diligent in looking at a variety of different instruments that are out there and helping break it down for us so we can look to see what might be a good fit for our institution. This guide is really to help you successfully select and then implement a campus climate survey. One of the things to consider is who's going to do this work? Who's going to administer the campus climate survey itself? Do you have an institutional research unit who may be able to do so? Is there a faculty staff research team that can be comprised on your campus? Or do you bring in somebody from the outside? Do you hire an external consultant to help do this work? So this document features pros and cons for each of these 3 different models that I encourage you to take a look at. It also includes a review of these survey instruments across several different factors, right? So what are the costs? How long is this going to take to complete? A breakdown of sections, a breakdown of time for each section of those core domains. And that can help you choose when might we want to look to issue something like this. And then finally, what are all of the overall strengths and weaknesses that are included in this document? The authors used a very rigorous approach to ensure that all of the instruments that were being evaluated are both scientifically supported and easy for us to be able to actually implement and use. So the next thing I would highlight as a part of this document is the step-by-step implementation guide that's provided to help institutions understand what resources might be needed to implement this campus climate survey, and what are some of the key decision points that they consider during the implementation. For those of you who have already done this work, who have administered surveys, you might be interested in the sections that pertain to best practices for increasing response rates. We know that our students are overwhelmed with surveying and so much that has occurred on our college campuses. Response rates, though, are so important if we're going to be really reflective of the diversity of our campuses and reflective ultimately of our campus sample, right? So what is it that we can do to increase those response rates? Some of those best practices I would encourage you to take a look at. And then I would also encourage you to take a look at how are we actually communicating the findings of the survey to our campus community. Many times when we are surveying students, they're asked to sit down, give us some of their time, fill out this information, but then where does that actually go? Do the students have a sense of what were the findings of the survey that you asked me to take? And what is the college going to do with this information moving forward? Right? So what are best practices for involving our student population in that and effectively communicating to them moving forward? So overall, this is a really important resource. I encourage you, if you printed it out back in 2020, dust it off, click these links, go through it again, because this is going to allow us to inform our work from theory-driven best practices and ultimately lead to meaningful change on our campuses, which is really the reason that we are all here.
Thank you, Kat. I appreciate that. I do want to just pause for a moment. I recognize that there are contributing members that are on this call to one or more of these documents. So I want to please just, if you want to offer, jump in, elaborate on something that maybe myself, Kat, or Frank mentioned, feel free. I don't want to call names, but I want to put it out there. And just to kind of just echo Kat's sentiments, you know, these are really valuable resources that were vetted by state experts, a diverse cross-section of folks who bring a perspective, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? So and I think I just want to highlight that, especially for those of you that are novice and you have not conducted yet, this may be your first time and you're not sure how you're going to do it. I really want to redirect you back to the resources. So next slide, please. So I'm gonna turn it back over to Steph with our frequently asked questions.
Thank you. So we did want to share several questions we did receive in advance. So thank you for submitting. Again, we recognize that institutions are at different steps in this process. So we will be creating a frequently asked questions document that you can also resort back to. If you think of any additional questions, you can feel free to email them to the email address on the screen, and we'll continue to update that document as we hear from institutions as well. And again, as Dr. Connor was just alluding to, we do have a lot of expertise from commission members. So if any of them want to jump in with additional insight into questions based on their own institutional experience, would welcome that as well. So I wanted to begin with questions that we received about surveying. One question was regarding if anyone should be excluded from survey, should employees be included in these campus climate surveys? And we do encourage institutions be inclusive in their surveying. We recognize this may be dependent on the survey tool, goals, or context of the institution. The template that you will receive from OSHI will ask institutions to provide demographics, both of those that were surveyed or requested to participate in the survey and the overall institution. In addition, those resource guidebooks that were just discussed include information about how to be inclusive in your surveying. And again, in considering demographics, you could expect questions like demographics of those being sampled, year in school, race and ethnicity, but it should be reflective of the specific climate survey and domains being covered. We also received a question regarding if there are suggestions for templates to use for the campus climate survey. And again, we really recommend that you utilize that campus climate survey inventory deliverable to look at the variety of options that are available to institutions. While some participants did reach out about specific surveys being conducted, this resource can help demonstrate what is considered a campus climate survey. Again, something that measures attitudes, perceptions, behaviors, and experiences of campus stakeholders concerning the safety and inclusivity of their campus environment. Participants may want to review this resource for consideration, and institutions should review the survey and select the one that best meets their needs. The deliverable that was mentioned, again, just to reemphasize, includes considerations for institutions when selecting and implementing the campus climate survey. We also received a question regarding the domains that were mentioned. The deliverable highlights 8 core domains, and it was asked if all domains need to be hit within one campus climate survey. And no, all domains do not need to be included in the campus climate survey selected. However, institutions will be asked what domains were covered in the survey that they implemented in the template being selected. We were asked how often to survey the campus, and can we begin with the data that has already been collected? And again, the institutions who have collected from 2018 to 2022, that 4-year timeframe, are able to utilize their data if it's appropriate. The statute says regular intervals at no longer than 4 years. We also received a question about overall best practices. And again, I hope you were able to capture a lot of those from today's presentation. I will share that one of the CSAC members shared 2 highlights that they recommend, which is, again, there's a lot of different decision points. So 2 things that you might want to consider include engaging an advisory board from the beginning to help with all aspects of the project, especially figuring out how the results will be used to inform the action on the institution. And also discussing and agreeing upon levels of transparency and how results will be disseminated prior to implementing the survey. So again, those are some additional considerations that you might have. We received some questions about submission. And again, I know there's more information forthcoming. Is there a code book for how the file will be submitted and how the data should be structured? So no, there will not be a code book, but OSHI will provide a template with directions. If there are questions about the template, a contact will be provided, and a future technical assistance workshop may be considered. Given the diverse number of campus climate surveys in year 1, institutions can note that it will be more of a landscape baseline information for comparison. We would note that this is an effort to improve campus climate, and specifically with this effort, improve campus climate surveys and evaluations. So institutions can inform their practice and work to improve and create the best learning climate possible for students, faculty, and staff. We also want to recognize that the Violence Against Women Act has been reauthorized, and there was a question about, since that act has been renewed, and now includes a climate survey requirement, how will that interact with the state legislation? So OSHI and the commission are aware and monitoring the updates as part of the Violence Against Women Act. The Department of Education is still working on creating a tool and providing guidance on this requirement. As of now, New Jersey is continuing to move forward in accordance with the state legislation and awaiting further guidance from the feds, which will inform the next cycle. We also received a question about what does an institution do in regards to concerns and barriers for funding and resources to administer. And again, we encourage institutions to utilize the SILE deliverables presented. They were created with the fact that institutions have varying levels of resources, as well as utilizing the commission for their expertise and advice as well. So those were the questions we received in advance. I believe, does anyone from we have some questions from the chat. So we have a question about if your institution is a non-residential campus or offers courses online, or is there still an expectation to do a campus climate survey? And yes, the requirement is for all New Jersey institutions of higher education that are degree granting. We have a question about the deadline for which institutions must submit their climate survey data. So if an institution has completed, if we could go back to that slide really quick, Rada. All right. If an institution has collected, well, go forward one, please.
Go one here. Go forward, back the other way twice. There you go, this one.
All right. Institutions that have conducted a campus climate survey between 2018 and 2022, the deadline will be the end of 2022, so December 31st. If an institution has not conducted a campus climate survey in that 2018 to 2022 timeframe, they have until June 30th, 2023. Any additional thoughts or comments from the commission? All right, so again, there will be a forthcoming frequently asked questions document available on the commission's website, which is housed within OSHI. We will also make sure we send a link to all the participants who registered for today's webinar. Again, the commission will be hosting additional technical assistance workshops. And while today was more of a kickoff and overview of no matter where you are in the process, we anticipate additional targeted workshops to assist you in this critical work. To that end, we would love your feedback on today's webinar. We're going to issue a few polls, but we're also putting a Google document in the link. If you could please complete that survey as well.
And Stephanie, we have one question in the chat. I want to make sure that we get to it. It's who is expected to receive the template? Like, where are we going to email it?
So the template, when available, will be shared via OSHI's new broadcast that is occurring. So it goes to institutional leadership and different listservs. We will also, we would now have the list of everyone who registered for this webinar, so we can also highlight it there, and it would also be available on our OSHI website as well.
And also, we shared an assessment form, a questionnaire, if you will, in the chat. We really encourage you all to complete it, because if for some reason you may not be or have been the most appropriate person on today's TA session, we want to encourage you to share it with the people at your university or institution that need to know. It's important that we are communicating with the appropriate folks at your institution. So please complete the questionnaire. It will really help us as we move forward and as we think and plan future technical assistance workshops.
And I see that we also received a question about if the PowerPoint will be shared. We won't be sharing the PowerPoint, but we will be sharing this recording with the PowerPoint, and that will be available on the OSHI website, in which you can then go to the commission website, and we'll put that link in the chat as well. So with that, Aiden, we would love for you to launch your polls.
I have one more question. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, the poll's already launched. I'll wait. So the question that we're asking is, do you feel confident that your institution will be able to implement best practices for creating campus safety and inclusive environments? Yes, no, or maybe? All right. Favorable. Favorable. Okay, thank you for that. Before we jump to the next poll, Aiden, I just want to make sure that we answer this question in case folks have to jump off at 12. The question is, the questionnaire is asking for a Gmail login. Is there another form? We will work on that. Currently, that's what we have. We'll double check our settings to see if there's a way to adjust that. Aiden, would you mind dropping the next poll, please? Thank you. Okay, let's see, would people be interested in attending? You can share the findings, Aiden, if we're ready. Okay, wonderful. Okay. Okay, and our last poll. Do you believe that you are the appropriate person to be at today's webinar? Okay. For those of you that answered maybe, if you follow our questionnaire, we will give you an opportunity to elaborate on that if you were not the appropriate person and share the form with the appropriate person. Kat, were you going to say something? I saw you unmuted.
I was just going to tease us for being data nerds with, even in this presentation, we just love to hear from folks, but really we wanted to make this interactive and we wanted to have an opportunity to ensure that we're getting to the right folks because we all work in higher education. We know that the right person on my campus might not be the right person on your campus. And we want this to be collaborative. We want this to be intersectional. We want this not to be siloed, right? So thank you all for your help in making sure that we get the right flight path to the people who could really need this information so that they are able to access it, to learn, to grow with us, and that at the end of the day, we can really move the bar in terms of outcomes for our campus.
Thank you. And just to the question related to the Google form, we adjust the settings. So let's try it again. We limited to one response. So perhaps maybe it was a duplicate response. But if you have any issues, feel free to reach out. We'll be more than happy to navigate through that. Or you can always share your feedback if you want to email Stephanie or I or a member of the commission. Feel free.
I just want to say again, thank you all for attending today's session. We appreciate your time and work as we make sure that New Jersey students feel safe, included, and welcomed on campus. And we want to be able to do this without your collaboration. Thank you also to the Campus Sexual Assault Commission for your leadership in this work. Again, in the chat, you can find the commission webpage available through OSHI's website, which includes all the resources that have been placed in the chat so far. Also, you can find my contact information here on the screen if you're unsure of where to go to next. Again, this recording will be placed on the website, but it might take a few days to get that uploaded. So again, thank you all and hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone.